All right, so welcome to Who's Gonna Fill Their Shoes, episode 2. How's it going, Wes?
It's going well, yeah. My name's Wes, and Josh. It's good to be here.
Yeah, same. Had a lot of fun doing the first episode on Johnny Paycheck Survivor, and excited to dive into a new album today.
Yes, I don't think we could have picked two more opposite individuals, but here we are. Who are we talking about today?
So today we're gonna do John Prine's "Aimless Love."
Oh yes, uh, I can't wait. I know you and I have talked a lot about John Prine before the program. It is kind of funny. We'll get into this that not really on purpose, but we picked two albums from the same year in the mid '80s in country. Kind of an interesting time period, but it sort of works.
Yeah, randomly enough, we picked two different albums by a guy named John from 1984, and I don't think these could be any more different sounding albums, different thematically, sound wise. They're not very similar.
No, no. Well, what do you know about John Prine anyway? A little intro about him for those that a lot of people do know about John, but maybe for those that don't.
Yeah, so Prine was born October 10th, 1946 in Maywood, Illinois, which is a suburb of Chicago. And both of Prine's parents were born in Muhlenberg, Kentucky, which is they were from Paradise. So if you know the famous John Prine song "Paradise" about Kentucky, he wrote that about his youth and families from his grandparents.
Yeah, it's funny. I used to always, think John Prine's a Kentucky boy, and in a lot of ways he is, and he talked about it plenty. Paradise is about 45 minutes east of Madisonville, Kentucky, which is where I grew up, actually. I knew a lot of folks in Central City, which is really close to there, and yeah, it's just right off the Green River, where ultimately, when John Prine passed away, they did spread some of his ashes there. I know Mr. Peabody Coal that he talks about in that song too. It's everybody who's from around there has heard of that. So yeah, I mean, I could go on and on. Really, everybody talks about. Well, Josh, you're from Kentucky, and you know how we are in Kentucky. We talk about counties, so I always heard about Muhlenberg County being up next to where I'm from, Hopkins County. It's a really beautiful part of Kentucky, actually.
Yeah, and I think Paradise famously got washed away by Mr. Peabody's coal company. So I don't even think it's there anymore, is it?
I don't think so. Driving out that way, I remember you'd always see. I feel like there's a big like couple of smokestacks off the interstate and stuff, and I mean, it's kind of broken down. People used to joke. Unfortunately, when I was growing up, people said Mecklenburg County a lot, instead of Muhlenberg, because it was pretty ravaged by the opioid epidemic that was really growing when I was a kid. And I just know that Prine loved the area. I'm glad he documented it. It deserves to be talked about in a beautiful light. There's really not enough of that. It's kind of sad, and I know that's not on this album, but it feels like it's a part of John Prine's story, and it does tie into a lot of, I think, his sense of humor.
Oh, for sure. And I think, I mean, even the song Paradise talks about basically saying Kentucky's heaven. So I think Kentucky really was where Prine felt at home. And, Kentuckians really take pride in John Prine. And I kind of feel like he is a Kentuckian, even though he was born in Illinois, kind of like Abraham Lincoln shares that Illinois Kentucky heritage too. Or both states like to
Yeah,
claim him, but
that's a good comparison. That's a good point. I never thought about that. We got Prine and Lincoln, the two Chicago turned Kentucky boys, right?
yeah. So, you want to get into this album a little bit?
Yeah, I think so. I will say before we get into kind of the some of the individuals who are involved. I was reading about this a little bit because I was just curious when John Prine moved to Nashville because Oh Boy started in Nashville, and I know we're going to talk about that, but looks like he moved there around the year 1980. And before this album, he put out his last major record release, Storm Windows. And then not long after that, he started Oh Boy. And I know you looked into that a little bit, right?
A little bit, yeah. It seems like once his record label was done, his deal with Asylum, he kind of was looking for a change, and he was good buddies with Steve Goodman, and so Steve Goodman had his own record label, and Prine was inspired to start his own, so he called it "Oh Boy" because he said it was kind of apropos for both good and bad situations, which sounds very Prine and very Kentuckian, honestly.
Yeah, yeah, it does. It's oh man, it's that is classic. I think it's cool that he did that too, and there's a lot that I think is part of the. It's why well, it's a big part of why we picked this album, just to kind of dig into that history. And I I I think it was well reviewed. We found a couple of reviews when we looked online, but I don't know that it's as well known as a lot of other John Prine records, and it didn't chart because it was self released, and we'll kind of talk more about that too, but. Yeah, I think it's cool that John Prine moved to Nashville. He had a couple of those major record label releases. I mean, it's just the way that Nashville is, right? It seems like it either eats people up or it inspires people, and seems like it did a little bit of both to John, right? He said "to hell with it," started Oh Boy, and I mean that really cemented his legacy. I don't know that he had to do that, but I'm sure glad he did because he went his own way from there, and that's just the way a Kentuckian turned Chicago mailman turned Nashville guy would have to do it, right?
Yeah, and I think Prine had some reasonable success before he went this route. He was pretty well regarded as a songwriter at this point, and um, even him and Steve Goodman wrote "You Never Even Call Me by My Name," which a lot of people would say that's up there as the best country tracks ever written for David Allan Coe. And Prine famously didn't put his name on the credits because he thought it was a silly song, and here it became a huge hit for David Allan Coe, and it's one that I think now everyone knows that song, and probably most people don't know Prine wrote that.
Yeah, I know every version of that song. It's almost like a little folk song too, where I'm just looking at the lyrics. 'Cause I always love the little breakdown and the way that David Allan Coe does it. He's telling the story in it about Steve Goodman writing the song and how he says, it's not a perfect country song because he didn't say anything about mama or trains, trucks, prison, or getting drunk. And then, of course, famously, the next verse is, "Well, I was drunk the day my mom got out of prison." uh, and then, of course, she got run over by the damned old train. Yeah.
Yeah, and I,
uh,
I definitely believe Coe wrote that verse because it sounds like something he would write.
yeah, but I think if you find there's some pretty good YouTube videos of Steve Goodman doing this song, and I actually, in preparation for this show, I went and found one. There was Prine as a part of a tribute to Steve Goodman covering that song, and Prine's version is just as good as any of them, so not a surprise. And yeah, it's funny that he wouldn't have wanted to necessarily attach his name to that because I feel like humor became such a signature part of his songs. That sort of grew over time too. I don't know that his debut is as funny as some of the rest, but again, we're not talking about that today. So, um, yeah. I mean, it's a great intro into sort of some of the background of what was going on, and I think even if Steve Goodman didn't play a huge part, he clearly had a role in this album.
Oh, big time! And I mean, they're really good friends, from what I can gather. And I think there is a video out there of Prine and Goodman playing that song. I may be mistaken, but I feel like I've seen that before, and it is a little different their version. But I mean, that's kind of the beauty. I think, as we'll talk a little bit about this, as good of a performer as Prine was, I was a little surprised at how many songs he wrote for other people that honestly I had no idea he wrote, and kind of shows his ability to write songs from many perspectives and for different people.
Yeah, that's a good point. Where did they? I don't think you said this already, but they did not record this in Nashville, right?
They did not. It was recorded in Alpha Studios in Burbank, California, with Jim Rooney and then John Prine. They both produced it. Except for People Putting People Down, Steve Goodman did help produce that track. So
I wonder why it was only involved on that. I mean, I couldn't really find much about it, but it could just be they were maybe writing that one together too.
Yeah, I'd assume timing issues, writing. Who knows back then?
Well, let's jump in. Let's talk about this record.
All right, so track one is "Be My Friend Tonight," and this was written by Prine, Roger Cook, and Shel Silverstein. So, kind of shocked that any of these guys were together, but I found a quote where Prine was talking to Bobby Bear, and he said, "And you know, in Nashville, you sit down and have a beer with somebody, and the next thing you know, you're writing a song," which kind of seems to be the case. Roger Cook was a British songwriter who wrote the song "I'd Love to Teach the World to Sing," and even that "Long Cool Woman" song, which I think probably everyone's heard. Fun fact too, he's the only British songwriter to be included in the Nashville Songwriter Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I'm just looking. Was there, you had mentioned him. You were familiar with him, and I really didn't know. So I went and read about this a little bit. And I guess he had moved to Nashville in 1975. So, he actually moved to the U.S. and went straight there. It seems to be the story. And yeah, I mean, he had done a Crystal Gale hit, "Talking in Your Sleep." "Love Is on a Roll" by Don Williams. So I mean, he really got involved right away. So I suppose if Prine ended up there in 1980, it's not too surprising. Somebody probably said, hey, you ought to get involved with Cook. He's Roger Cook. He's out there working on some country songs and albums. Seems to be the kind of the way that this city operates.
Yeah, and I couldn't really find how they got connected, but could have been like I said, they could have just been at a bar and met or something. And I mean, Prine seemed to be pretty connected or in tune with other songwriters, so I imagine they kind of hit it off somehow. And it is surprising that Cook was there. I mean, most of his hits that he wrote before this were all pop hits, and he had quite a bit in the 60s. And so it is interesting to have such a change of pace for him. But I was surprised that Prine and Cook went on to write a bunch of other songs, including "I Just Want to Dance with You" for George Strait, which that was a massive hit. And I knew that song, I think, just from the radio. And I was kind of surprised that Prine wrote that one, even. It's like, doesn't really sound like a Prine song, but
Is
just,
that like a late '80s George Strait song?
I believe it was late 80s, yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, that's impressive. I wouldn't have guessed that either. But I think Prine penned a lot of pretty successful songs beyond just ones that he did. At least that seems to be part of his legacy.
For sure. And I mean, that goes to show how strong this album is, because I haven't even talked about my favorite writer ever as far as books is on this, Shel Silverstein. And man, what a brilliant writer he was. Kooky, funny, just one of a kind. I think everyone knows Shel Silverstein's books, but probably less people know his country music ventures, which included "Boy Named Sue," so many songs for Bobby Bear.
Bobby Bear, yeah, that's how I know him. Really, is some of the Bobby Bear ones.
He seemed to be around country songwriters in Nashville quite a bit. He was with Jimmy Buffett and David Allan Coe there for a while, and had a few of his own albums which are pretty out there. Very worth listening to. I think as a songwriter and even a musician, singer, very underrated person. But I mean, I have a lot of love for Shel Silverstein and his writing. I think it's when I hear a song that is Shel Silverstein, if I don't know it is him, I usually can look it up and say, "Yep, that was Shel," because he really has his own style, which doesn't really come together too much on this song. But I'm not too surprised he was involved in this song.
No, this song is more one of the more like he played it more straight on this than he typically does. That being said, I mean, you kick the album off. The very first lyric is "I threw a party, nobody came." So I mean, that feels very Silverstein-esque to me. I mean, that what a way to kick it off. Honestly, it's. I mean, it doesn't. It's not. There's nothing too, profound about that necessarily. But I do feel like that's you instantly know what you're about to get into with that opening lyric.
Yeah, and it's a pretty upbeat song. It's got Donnie Fritz on the keys. It's a pretty honky tonk sounding song with a honky tonk piano and pedal steel solo in there, and it starts off on a high point for sure. It's definitely a more subdued, silly song, but it is it's very Prine, and it's, I think, going back to what we were talking about with this album coming out in '84, it does not sound like it's a '80s album at all. Starting off,
No, I mean even compared to the Johnny Paycheck record we just did from around the same era, the production on this couldn't be more different. There's none of that sort of gloss or cheese, in the best way. I really liked the little like piano pedal steel bridge that's in the middle of this song. Yeah, it is just kind of a little light rocker, but nice little bridge there, and it's a pretty song, and a funny one at that.
yeah, definitely one of the more funny songs on this album, and a good way to kick it off for sure. I think, which brings me to track two, which is "Aimless Love," the title track on the album. Um, this one slows down a little bit, and I really like this one. I think a great line. He looks at strangers as potential dangers, trying to steal his aimless love. Um, Beautiful. I think this song is really Prime just saying how special an aimless love is, because it's not for purpose, but rather just exist. This person just is like so aimlessly walking through life with this love they have, and like kind of immune to life's craziness and people taking advantage of that aimless love and just searching for something. I really like this track as well.
Yeah, I agree. I have to mention the backing vocals too. I before I really dug into the personnel and was just kind of listening to this. At first, I was wondering if it was maybe Emmylou Harris. It sounds like her. But I think we looked into this Sandy Mason. They work really well with Prine. The soft delivery and Prine's voice. They're really subdued, but they work perfectly. Like they're just exactly what you want out of harmony and sort of backing vocals there, and a little harmonica buzz going in the background all throughout the song too. It's another just really, I think, one of the theme of all the songs on this record. They're very pretty, through and through.
Yeah, this is a much more sentimental album, I would say, for Prine, and I think this is the first track that really starts to show Philip Donnelly's guitar playing, who played on this one and the next album, German Afternoon, for Prine. I think his playing is very unique. It doesn't seem like he did a lot of country work, and it's kind of a reverb drenched. Like, I think if anything, his guitar is the most '80s sounding, but it's more so just not really a country guitar, and it really fits the theme of the album. It's very unique and makes the album really pretty. It's some of the best guitar playing I've heard.
Yeah, it almost like it's sort of ethereal sounding. It's like it fell off of something else. It's not quite drenched in reverb enough for me to go to like, oh, it sounds like it could be like a Daniel Lona like kind of sound, but it almost has that feel, like at times. Um, it's cool. I mean, it's unique. I don't think anybody else necessarily sounded that way. Like it works very well on this record.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it was definitely a high point for me. I think something we won't talk about is this album has a ton of credit listings on here, and I mean there's too many to name, and it's hard to know who plays on everything. So I think kind of just touching on the important people on the tracks seems more fitting for me. Which Wes did mention Sandy Mason, and I wasn't familiar with her too much, and I saw she wrote some songs, which one was one of Wes's favorite songs. I know, Two Pina Coladas by Garth Brooks.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's mm-hmm. Love that track.
uh, all right. Getting serious again. I don't think Wes likes that song, but I don't have too much more to say about the song. I think it's not the best song on the album, but it's definitely a good setup for the theme of this album. A good title track for it. The kind of, obviously I don't know of really many concept albums in country except Redheaded Stranger, but it thematically it is nice when an album seems like every song goes together. It's something we talked about the Paycheck album, or a couple are just kind of out there off the wall, but this is one that really keeps that theme that follows the song a lot, and so I think it is important to note that, and it kind of shows you where you're going throughout the album.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's right.
All right, so
You,
oh, did you have something?
well, something I was gonna say that before we get too much deeper into the record, I was looking, if you're on, I happen to use Tidal, but whatever you're using, if you're looking at sort of the like discography of John Prine, I don't know if you noticed this, but like his major record releases, at least leading up to this, like Pink Cadillac, Storm Windows, like every one of these has him sort of in different pose, similar pose. He dropped his long hair for Aimless Love. He was getting a little bit more serious with the short cut. So I guess he had to go to a new label, shorter hair. So we're getting a little bit of short haired John here, and he kind of kept that the rest of the time. I'm just looking at that. Doesn't have anything to do with the music, but this here is short haired John at his most serious.
Honestly, though, I guess I mean, how old would he have been here? Nearing 40, I think. It's funny you say that because I think for Prine, you think about Sam Stone, and some of the songs he written about were just so deep and really emotionally intense. Stuff that a lot of people could never write about, but a lot of his previous albums do have a silly, kind of absurd tint to them. And this album does feel like kind of like a grown up album. It's kind of like Prine's grown up album. So maybe that does make more sense. Like that was a note I made, that it just does feel a little more like that, with it being more subdued for Prime, a little more sentimental. So yeah, I could see how that's an interesting observation for sure.
Almost cut his hair. He did cut his hair.
Yeah. So track 3 is Me, Myself, and I think this song was you added the line, "Well, tonight I'll throw a party and I know who I'll invite. There's a strange and lonely person with whom I spend his night." Um, I think this goes back to the last album too, where we talked about our love of David Berman. You could put that on a Silver Jews or Purple Mountain song, and I wouldn't know any different. I thought
Yeah.
that was very beautiful. But this track was written by Spooner Oldham and Dan Penn, along with Prine. Dan Penn is, I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he is one of my favorite songwriters. This album, funny enough, I think we'll talk more about Prine's writing, but for the people he included to write with him on this, it's like Mount Rushmore level people for me. I mean, Dan Penn wrote Dark End of the Street, Do Right Woman, Do Right Man. Both of those is Spooner Oldham. I mean, as a big Graham Parsons fan, he covered both of those. Those are beautiful songs that a lot of soul singers covered. I mean, Dan Penn also had his own album. It has a song called Tear Joint on it. It's like, this ain't no beer joint. This is a tear joint. I mean, he was, I think he's still around, but man, he was brilliant. As well as,
Well,
yes.
Spooner Oldham, man, he's most famous, of course, for the Chrome Hearts. Um, no, he's been touring with Neil Young though, and he sure shows up on a lot of things. I feel like if you wanted to start to make, like, you could do 6 degrees of Spooner Oldham, and you could find a lot of pretty good country albums.
Oh God, and soul albums. If you just want to listen to some of the best songs ever written, just look at whatever Spooner Oldham's played on. You kind of just live there for the rest of your life. That he has been on everything, just shocking amount of stuff.
Yeah, it's a little unbelievable. No, I wasn't as familiar with Dan Penn, so that's I'll have to go look into some of those songs that you mentioned too, and I think that's the point being is there's just a lot of heavy hitters on this too, and I mentioned, yeah, there's, again, you start off, well, tonight I'll throw a party. There's a lot of party thrown on this record, it seems, but I'm not sure they're very happy parties in true Prine form. I sense a little sarcasm going on in a lot of.
Oh yeah, this is a great country song about. It's really about just a lonely guy spending time with pity and booze, and which is tell as old as time as far as country music goes. It's definitely a more upbeat song. Kind of changes the pace a little bit from the previous sentimental one. A little more like the first track. It's not my favorite track on the record, but it's a good change of pace. It's definitely a good song.
I still really like those guitar licks on there too. I mean, yeah, you mentioned it. Just I don't know. It's just a pretty song once again. This one's a little bit more upbeat once again, and then I think this album does a pretty good job of sort of moving between like rockers that sort of go by quickly and sort of like more melodic stuff. I think at one point that William talked, there's up next a little bit of a waltz. I mean, it works well. It doesn't feel disjointed. They all work and sort of flow together.
Yeah, and one thing I read compared this to a George Jones song, which I could see it being somewhat of a George Jones song with a different instrumental. It sounds kind of like something he could sing, but I don't know. This a good country song, plain and simple.
Yeah, yeah, that's damn right.
I will make one last point about Dan Penn here, since you said you weren't as familiar with him. Someone I know that loves Big Star. You're familiar with the song "The Letter," correct? By the Box Tops. Yeah, that was a Dan Penn song. Yeah, if you really dive into any of these people we talk about on this, and you just go look at the stuff they wrote, even not including John Prine, you're just kind of like, how do these people exist? And how did one person write so many great songs single handedly? Besides all of these random people collected, I guess that Prine met at the beer halls there in Nashville, just shooting the bull, I guess, as they
Well, I think
say.
it's probably telling. I mean, it's wild when you think about Prine's debut being in 1970. Here we're doing a record, 14 years later. But I feel like even just from the debut Prine record, he garnered so much attention and so much respect and appreciation. And I mean, a lot of people, myself included, adore Sweet Revenge, and Bruised Orange has so many good songs. Like, there's just so many great songs already, and he had done great collaborations and been covered by wonderful people. So I'm not really surprised that on his first self-produced record that he could get some of these all-star writers and musicians. This is almost the opposite of the Paycheck record, where we were really kind of floating around in obscurity. A lot of these people are pretty well-known individuals in the world of country music.
Yeah, for sure. Which I think brings us to the next song, which is track 4, "The Oldest Baby in the World," which this one was written by Prine and Donnie Fritz. And this one opens with a reference to Funky Donnie Fritz, which I don't know if you noticed, but hardcore country fans will know that in Chris Christopherson's The Pilgrim Chapter 33 and Jerry Jeff Walker's Pissin' in the Wind, they both start those songs out mentioning Funky Donnie Fritz in the songs.
Oh boy. Well, you got to be a specific kind of individual to be mentioned in a song by each of those guys.
Oh, for sure. And a specific kind of individual to notice that in all those songs.
Yeah, that's right.
I shouldn't have known that, but I thought that was pretty funny. I'm sure Prine was probably poking fun at that, knowing him. But yeah, Donnie Fritz, another guy that's just on this album that um, was on everything, produced so much. He wrote "We Had It All" for Waylon Jennings. He wrote some for Jerry Lee Lewis. He produced quite a bit. Another really brilliant guy on this record. He played keys on a lot of it. Seems.
Yeah, that's what I just was reading about before we got together here. That he had played with Chris Christopherson for like 40 years, and um, I'm looking over this again. Oh wow, okay, yeah. I guess he. I don't know if this is saying that he was actually an actor in them or just played, but it says he was in multiple Sam Peckinpah movies: Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid, Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia, and Convoy.
I'm pretty
Um,
sure he was in those. Actually, he seemed like a pretty interesting dude. I know a lot of people really respected him, and he was another guy that just kind of was around Nashville back then. That uh, sadly he died not too long ago, but he had a lot of influence over a lot of different people.
Yeah, seems like it. Interesting guy to say the least, and clearly contributed to a good one here.
Yeah, and I think it goes to show too, if you look at a lot of this, where I was talking about Dan Penn and Spooner Oldham and some of the people on it, I think it's a good um, measure as far as relating to country music. That um, I think a lot of people get stuck in this idea of what they think country music is, and those guys were not. They were country, but they were writing songs for some of the biggest soul artists ever. I mean, if you read into some of the stuff they wrote, it's not a lot of country tracks. And I think that kind of shows the brilliance of country, which something I like to talk about is, a lot of R&B, soul music, country. They kind of go hand in hand because a lot of those people are Southerners and they're experienced a lot of similar things. Definitely different experiences, but you can definitely pull a lot of similarities in between those, and it's definitely something I like and makes sense because it's probably my two favorite genres of music.
Well, it's a great point, and I think part of it is that unfortunately it's still happening today. But what got to be called country music was so specific. And so a lot of artists who did country music, and some of them would break through and chart. I think most famously of like Ray Charles, right? Like did a country album, but wasn't considered a country musician, but by all means really was, right? Like I think these genres have a lot more in common than what they don't. And blues for that matter too. If you think about the essence of what country was in the beginning and blues, they're just two paths from the same kind of music. So it's not really all that different, and it's often written by yeah. I mean, we talked about it on the last record, but it's written by people with similar backgrounds. Like it's often about hard living, and there's usually a little bit of God in there too. Maybe you fear God, or maybe you fear that you've not done the righteous thing. That's a pretty common theme, and hasn't really changed to this day.
For sure, and a lot of the same songs are covered by R&B and country artists. If you look up certain songs, you can see Ray Charles and Willie Nelson, all these different people made their own spins on a lot of these songs. So you can definitely find a lot of similarities. Even some of the players, if you look into the Muscle Shoals stuff, Memphis Sound, some of those great soul albums are just playing by country guys, and it's kind of funny and surprising, and it makes it really special. I think it kind of shows the diversity of country more than people give it credit to.
Yeah, I fully agree. I think it's a point that's a little bit lost sometimes. Not often on musicians. I think friends of mine who play music regularly, that's not surprising to them. But I think the way that the music has been commercialized and sold, and especially how it was played on the radio, like everything has to be segmented out, and it what can be called country sometimes is not really all that different from other genres like soul or R&B, as you mentioned. So that's kind of fascinating in that way. Well, we're talking about the music a little bit on this too. I'll mention this over and over again, but the guitar playing is just there's like a little delay on it on this one. Like, I thought it almost sounded, the production reminded me a little bit of like Harvest Moon. And maybe just because this one's in a waltz too. I appreciate the waltz format. It's played really straight here, and I mean, what else can you ask for other than a great waltz on a John Prine record or any country record?
Well, you're talking about Harvest Moon, and Spooner Oldham played on that one. But for this song, it was, I mean, the oldest baby in the world. It sounds pretty ridiculous, and it kind of is. But I think that brings into what I was talking about, where this album feels a little more mature for Prine. There's some pretty funny one-liners, but the subject matter's maybe a little more mature. This seems about a woman and her mid ages, kind of living life that doesn't live up to her age and kind of longing for youth. There's that line, but youth is a costume and the beauty within lies unfurled. Um, it just kind of seems like someone that's maybe misunderstood. They're kind of looking for something or longing for something that's just kind of passed them by. And it, as silly as it is like something I think everyone can relate to or has encountered in their life. And it is a really pretty song.
You think that's meant to be like, is it saying like an immature person, like the oldest baby in the world, like someone who's just not quite gotten out of being a child or something?
I don't think so. I don't take the song as being inflammatory. I think it's more of maybe just someone that I don't know if it's a midlife crisis, but maybe just not quite found what they're looking for in life or haven't experienced life. Maybe they had something happen. It doesn't, the lyrics don't make it seem that way, but I think Prine was really good with nuance as well and not really writing stuff that was kind of mean. So, but it is definitely an interesting song on here lyrically.
Yeah, there's not a lot of bitterness on this album. Some sadness, but I don't think anything's written out of spite.
Not at all. But I mean, this one is one of the more silly ones, even though the instrumentation is a little more um, sentimental and slow, kind of a waltz.
Yeah. Yeah, it's played like maybe of all the songs played the most straight of any of them as just a true waltz and pretty lighthearted overall.
All right, so that takes us into track five, which is "Slow Boat to China." I think, as far as this album goes, there's not really any skips for me on this album, but it really starts to hit on this song, and I think you'll see for an album that I wasn't super familiar with before this. This song for me is just purely magical. It's a really interesting lyrical theme for Prime, but it's beautifully sentimental song and one that just I could listen to over and over and over.
Yeah, when we first decided we were gonna play this album, which to be honest, I'm not gonna speak for you, but I don't think that the whole album all the way through is familiar, totally familiar to either of us. I'd heard some of the songs, but not all of them, and this is the one that most immediately stood out to me. I think I remember texting you and just thinking, "Wow, this song blew me away." It has an interesting title, and I don't know that it necessarily ties into what the song is about, but it just the song is just perfect to me.
I agree. I think thematically is not a song you would think that John Prine would be writing about, but once you start listening to the lyrics, it makes sense. It's kind of like about seems like a couple Southerners that went on a trip to China, and it's very kind of absurd. You know, we're taking a slow boat to China, and he's talking about passing through all these places that would take forever. No one would ever take that trip to China, and it just seems really kind of like Southern people taking a trip to somewhere that's foreign and very unique to them. And some of these lyrics are just it just makes so much sense to me. Maybe they wouldn't as much to other people that aren't from the South. And I'm not trying to be, oh, I'm from the South, I understand things more, but I think the way it's written, I just kind of related to it.
Yeah, we'll buy mom a kimono, or maybe we'll just phone her when we're there.
Oh,
um,
that verse is so good. I mean, I'm just gonna repeat what you said, but one of the ending verses where it says, "Send a postcard to Grandpa or a vase or a rickshaw. He don't care. We'll buy Mom a kimono, or maybe we'll just phone her when we're there." That's just that reminds me of so many family members that you just get them something as a souvenir that is usually the most generic touristy thing you could ever get, and to them it's like this. I can't believe I got this thing from China that it means nothing really. You know, it's probably a millions of them produced as tourist things, but it's such a funny and sentimental way to look at something, I think.
Well, even I mean, the title alone is funny when you think about it that way. Like taking the slow boat to China, like it's absurd, really, and it's definitely the most John Prine song yet on this record. Singing is so John Prine, the humor, and it does feel genuine. I mean, you're pointing out that story, and no, it's true. Like every Southerner knows you go on a trip, and it's not just a Southern thing, but in particular, you buy little knickknacks and you buy funny things and you bring them back, and you got to get one for grandma and grandpa, and like I can just imagine, like at least in, like I think of my own dad, who he's gone around the U.S. a lot, but he's never left the U.S. and I don't think he ever would. And so bringing him something back from China would, no matter what it was, he would be a bit amazed by it.
Oh, for sure. It would seem like you brought something back from the moon, especially back then. And I think you, I got to read the lyrics. It is so absurd when you really poke into this song where it says, "Let's take a slow boat to China, leave from South Carolina. Let's take our time and go the long way on a junk boat to Thailand. With your hand in my hand, I sure hope we got something to say. This old boat's got no sail, so won't you please hold the mail for a while? Thanks anyway, pal. But the Suez Canal ain't our style." I mean, you're gonna sail from South Carolina and take the long way down across Africa. And it is so prime that it just seems like something that could never happen and so not thought out. And it honestly makes more sense reading this and listening to this song. I think it kind of fits why it's so magical and mystical with the instrumentation. It is a beautiful song. You have
Yes,
Bobby
yes.
Whitlock on this, as you said. He was in Derek and the Dominoes. I think he wrote this song with Brian, which he's playing the piano. It's sprinkled in so beautifully, and I think just with those lyrics being so absurd, it's something that could never happen. Obviously, it kind of seems like maybe this dream of a song where it's someone just daydreaming with someone they love, and it's like kind of this aimless love with someone that you're just like, what if this happened? What if we're drinking sake at night in the Harbor Lights? It's kind of this even goes into the part about getting the gifts. It's some foreign, magical, mystical dream that isn't really even a reality, but it's so silly and at the same time so magical. Like, who hasn't just like daydreamed about something with someone they love or about someone they love in a way that probably could never happen, but it's just in your mind. It's just like the most perfect way to spend time with someone.
Yeah, it feels like a love song in a lot of ways. I think this is a song or a record about love, or it feels that way to me. And we talked about the production and the instrumentation. I don't know that we'll sit around talking about the production on every record, but I think it plays a part. And again, we didn't pick these the first album that we covered in this one. We didn't pick them in this order for any particular reason other than they're albums that we were interested in that needed to be talked about. And again, like on the Paycheck record from around the same year, the drumming was a little stilted and almost had the sound of a drum machine. This is so the different. It's not under delivered at all. It's the opposite. The production is so great on this. Like, it doesn't sound overdone, or it just, it almost sounds just like so calming in a way. And the outro with Prine and Sandy singing on that, I guess Bobby doing the lead with the guitar, like, it just works so well. I mean, this is just a damn near perfect song.
Oh, for sure. I think Bobby's playing keys on this. With I think Phil plays guitar on everything in this album.
Oh, okay.
I yeah, this I could do a podcast about this song, an episode. I mean it, and which is crazy because, like I said, once you get to this song, the other songs are very, very great songs. You get to this song, and we'll talk more. But man, like, just beautiful. The outro with "Let's Go Real Slow," just over and over and soft. It just It is really beautiful, and it. I think some of the absurdity of this song, it always reminds me a little bit of Carmichael from Greendale by Neil Young, kind of the in a way where you're so loving with someone, and hopefully people have experienced this or will experience this as maybe we'll talk about in the last song here. But when you have a moment in life with someone that is so silly and so absurd and something when you're talking to someone else about or just like, what are you talking about? Like that just sounds kind of random. But in the moment you're just able to maybe even accept defeat or laugh about something so silly with someone that just is so meaningful in that time because you just know that being able to spend that time with someone makes that moment special. I think that's kind of what the song's about, and yeah, it really takes you to a special place.
Yeah, yeah. It's. I mean, I guess it's so. Now that I'm thinking about this, this is track 5. I don't have the physical record in front of me. Is this? Are we still on the A side of the album?
That is a good question. My physical copy is not by me. I am lucky enough to have this, but I don't know. It would make sense.
That's what I'm thinking. I'm trying to see if I can find a little quick picture of it here. Yeah, okay. It is. This is the end of the A side, Slow Back to China, which yeah, I mean I didn't know that offhand, but if I'm just listening to it and thinking about it and knowing where the rest of this record's going to go, very strong A side, but I think the B side's actually where we're really going to have.
All right, so knowing that makes a lot of sense because that song being the end of the A side, it is a really good closer for a side of. I think something lost now is that with streaming, people don't get to listen to albums the way they used to be. You see a lot of songs that are at the beginning of an album that are singles, and maybe people don't listen to the whole album. I think this ending side A is like a beautiful closer if you're. I'm not trying to be a snob in this way, but if you were listening on vinyl, because that was the format they had or tape back then, obviously you would want to flip to the next thing, and this kind of leaves you with a really beautiful ending to switch on to the B side, which would be track 6, which is the Bottomless Lake. And you're kind of going from a beautiful absurd to just like a really silly absurd with Prine. This is a little more true to form. And funny enough, with the last album we talked about, it was mostly recorded in '84, but it didn't come out till '96. This album was recorded in '84, but some of these songs, like The Bottomless Lake, were actually written back in '76 or a couple years before that, from what I can find. And this song and Aimless Love were two of those. And you can even find a performance on SNL of Prine playing the Bottomless Lake back in '76.
Yeah, there's a lot of good versions online. I have one that we can put a link out there, but I was really enjoying the intro. It's a hilarious song, and John Prine talking about it's even funnier. He comes in and he's introing it, and he says the song is called Bottomless Lake because I couldn't find enough to rhyme with Bottomless River. Um, and there's a lot of gems, but he's explaining sort of, he's going to like the lake or the river, and they're having to put their vehicles on like a ferry, and he's talking about there's a big drop down, and I guess the joke is he had never seen anything like that, so he said his grandpa was explaining it, and he said he couldn't just explain it, he always had to put a story in there, which is the most southern thing. We all know how that goes if you have a southern grandpa, but he couldn't just say yes or no, and he would talk in parables. So he was explaining that car ferry, and there was no yes or no. They had to have a story, and yeah, I mean, I'll get into the other thing that Prine says, but in his mind, I guess he's imagining the people in this actual car missing the ferry and falling right into the bottomless lake. And he says before he starts playing, if the lake is actually bottomless, I guess they're still falling, so they'll probably hear us on the radio.
Oh yeah, the song's very classic Prine wit. It is really funny, and I guess it's kind of dark, obviously, but it's very silly. And I think for me, there's a lot of songs where they were very overproduced back in the 70s and 80s, especially with songwriters, added strings and things that are really unnecessary. And sometimes you find this acoustic version of someone performing it, and you're always like, man, why did they not do it this way on the album? But oddly enough, this is one where, like, you look at the SNL is great, but I actually think the production of this song makes it even better because it has the fiddle on it. It makes it seem very Appalachian and very fitting for a song that's inspired by Prine's Kentucky family stories, and goes along with the song really well. It's not too overdone in any way, and it's really good instrumentation on the song.
Yeah, that's a great. I mean, it's a family song. You mentioned instrumentation. David Prine is playing fiddle on this song.
Oh wow.
That's John's older brother. So I really didn't know. I was looking into it. I saw David Prine listed on the credits, so I went and read about him a little bit. And he didn't just play with John Prine, but he's the one kind of tearing up the fiddle here, and the fiddle is really prominent in a great way on this one too. I mean, I think I could listen to this song 100 times and never get tired of it. This is exactly what I want out of John Prine. I mean, the fiddle, the hand claps, it's rootsy, it's hilarious. I mean, if you press me to name some of the best John Prine songs, I would put this up there amongst some of my favorites and what I consider to be some of the best.
Oh yeah. I mean, just reading the lyrics to this song, it is it is hilarious. I mean, they're
Yeah, the
they're
one that I pulled out is the
yeah, go for it.
what's that? Oh, for heaven's sake, we fell in a lake, and I think we're all gonna drown. We're falling down to the bottom of a hole in the ground. Smoke 'em if you got 'em. I'm so scared I can hardly breathe. I may never see my sweetheart again.
Oh yeah.
I think that's part of the chorus, right?
Yeah, that is. And he goes on to talk about they have plenty of food in the back seat, and they had the windows rolled up tight, and they're just going to hang out in the car all night while they're sinking in this bottomless lake, listening to music on the radio. And I mean, it is just really, really funny writing.
Yeah, the even the ending. There's just the music stops and just a brief little spoken word part from Prine. He just says, "Friends and neighbors, there you go."
Yeah, I mean, and it really sums up so many different kind of tropes of the South too, where the mama's rocking the baby to sleep. It's talking about he had a chicken leg, and they had the Bible in the back seat to read of David and Solomon. It's just it is yeah. This really
This is
starts
like
off yeah.
Yeah, no, it's like the funny version. I don't know if you know that Flannery O'Connor story. A good man is hard to find, where like all the Southern family goes on this like car ride, and ultimately they run into like a murderer, and they all they all die because the grandma just can't like hold herself together, and they give away that they know who the murderer is. But that's a like the briefest and most like mundane summary of that short story ever. It's actually really brilliant. But this is like the other side of that. Like it's still a family car ride gone wrong, but it's funny, right? Like it's falling through a bottomless lake would probably not be a good experience, but just the way it's played, like I can just see the family in the car panicking. The mom and the dad are probably the ones smoking, and it's just ridiculous.
Oh, it's so ridiculous, and I think him basing this on a lot of stories from his family is you'll hear family members tell stories at times that just seem so ridiculous in Kentucky, I think, and they're always true. And this is almost believable from things that I've heard, where it's just like you just can't believe it, and it's so hilarious in the way Southern people, some especially Kentuckians, I think I'm a little biased here, but the way they tell stories is just there's there's so much wit and magic to it, and it's can be so silly and so funny that it is just remarkably beautiful and absurd, and I think that's really what he's doing here.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, again, you could talk, and we have talked a lot about this track, but it's worth looking up some of the live versions and the fact that it kind of floated around for a while. I think he put it on this one for a reason. You got to go big on your first self-released, and this is just true to form. I mean, it it just works. It's a John Prine song, and no one else I think could do this song.
No, not remotely. This was only a song he could do. I think if anyone else did it, it would sound inauthentic and kind of random. Um, but yeah, it seems like from what I've read, it seems like he was kind of slow writer and maybe is slow at producing albums. So maybe it's just a song he kind of had sitting around he wasn't sure about. So it makes sense that he put it on this album because it is a really strong song.
Yeah, it reminds me. It's sort of in the vein of like, "Please Don't Bury Me." It has that same kind of humor to me, and almost feel to it. It's a light song. It's breezy.
Yeah, for sure. It's not. It doesn't feel heavy. It's definitely a silly song. All right, so on track 7, we go into Marine Marine, which I read Wes's notes and he said that this is maybe his least favorite and he's not really sure about it. I I put that I disagree because I think the first few songs are not bad, but once we said you get to Slow Boat to China, I want to talk about a little bit about Prine's writing. I think the second half of this album is, for lack of better references, it's really like Shakespearean level writing for me. It's, I mean, some of the stories of life, tragedy. I mean, even the previous songs, a tragedy in a ridiculous way. And I think this song is really, really beautiful. I found a live version. This is also another one that was kicking around from the mid 70s. And he joked that he was writing the song for Anthony Perkins because he scares him more than anyone.
Oh God, that's good. Yeah, yeah. I'm glad you took something from this that I didn't. I would be shocked if that doesn't happen at least a couple times on every record. It certainly did on the last album that we did, and the Johnny Paycheck one. And I would not ever go out on a limb to say this is a bad song. I wouldn't argue that at all. It's a little bit of a different direction. I think that it took me in a place, especially you'll see when we get to the next track, of course, but um yeah, I just didn't know what to make of it, to be honest. I guess knowing what he said there, it is meant to be a bit of a darker song.
This is definitely the darkest song on the album. He even talked about someone taking him to see Jaws on a date. And some silly stuff in that live version. It's pretty funny, which if I remember right, it's a really short live version and it goes straight into Pretty Good, which is funny. But cuz that song is not dark at all. But I do agree. I think this is one of the darker songs on the album, and it doesn't sound as dark because it is a little silly at first. I mean, it opens with Marine Marine. I shot a doctor last night on the airplane. The chords are really pretty on this though. With the walk down, it's more of a unique instrumentation on it. I think that the songs. I agree. It is a little hard to parse out what he's talking about, but I think lyrically, it's about someone that's lost in their own lives, and they've kind of convinced themselves that they love someone they don't. I think, and they're looking for that person to confirm they do. It even says, "I may have lied to myself, but I try to tell God how I love you, but even He don't answer His phone anymore." I think that the narrator of the song is so absurd that they're just like making up so much that like he even is like, oh, I think God even knows now that I'm just full of it, and they're just holding on to something because they want something to hold on to, even if it's not real or it's not working for them. And that person also knows it, and it just is kind of fed up with the lies because he keeps asking the person in the song, their partner, like, don't you believe me?
Yeah, it's an interesting tale. You know, what's really strange is when I was listening to this the third or fourth time through the album and then hit this song. Uh, it has nothing to do with this track, but Marine Marine made me think of Karina Karina. Probably just because it's the double name, the Bob Dylan song. And I went and listened, and they actually sound like kind of similar, and like they're both kind of sad songs. I don't know. There's not really any connection there, but it's weird. That's just how my mind works sometimes. And I was like, maybe in some weird way, Prine had heard that song and then wrote this like bizarro tale. You know, it is almost like a Southern Gothic tale in its own little way.
Oh, for sure. I mean, which makes sense. Him talking about Anthony Perkins, and I think I mixed that story up earlier. He was talking about Jaws for some reason, but he went on a date to see Psycho. That's what it was. And I don't know how it
Oh boy,
inspired the song
that's
too much, but maybe it's just the darkness of the song did.
that's about like I went and saw on a date one time saw the David Lynch shorts. It's about as
Oh
good
no.
as seeing Psycho on a date. Probably don't do that.
Yeah. Unless you're wanting to run out of the theater scared or never go on a second date. Yeah. Those aren't the usually the choices you'd go with. But really, I don't know. I really did like. The more I listened to it, I thought the song was pretty inventive with the lyrics, and I think you could say it doesn't fit on the album. But for me, I think the Aimless Love is kind of where it's not a concept album. I think it's loosely just talking about different ways of life and love. Like the previous song, that was a couple that was in love that drove to the bottomless lake with their family. You have beautiful love songs on this album. You have some that are kind of pity party songs. You're alone. I think it's kind of just going on this roller coaster of life and how things can look, and people experience things differently that are all kind of have this through line of love in life. And I think it will talk about that kind of in the end of this album, that life is kind of just led by how people find love and the people in their life. And I think this song is maybe one of the ones that is more about how it's misplaced and how someone in this crazy way of this song can end up in a situation that's not helping anyone.
Yeah, it's still at the end of the day, it's a love song, right? I mean, that's why it fits, because it's a love album and it's about love that doesn't. Even the family song, "The Bottomless Lake," it's about familiar love. So that is the through line on all these songs, I think.
Yeah, I agree. But that's about as much I can say about Marine Marine. I think you should listen to it. Um, and, that's kind of the fun about doing this and why I want people to listen to these albums. I think I want to find a lot of albums that don't have a lot of skips, but maybe there are songs that we will agree on that, like, yeah, this song, it's okay. Or we'll have these minor disagreements about the ones that mean more to us. But that's a beautiful thing about music is that, someone may listen to a song and say, whoa, I've been this person, or I've experienced this way. And there's always going to be a song on an album that other people appreciate more. And that's what's so fun and beautiful about music. So I love getting to talk about it and dissect these things with you.
I mean, that's part of what the fun of it is. I'd be upset if we agreed on everything on all these you know, a song by song. It wouldn't make a lot of sense if we did because they're going to feel different for us. And there's probably somebody we think a song is perfect and beautiful, and someone's like, I can't listen to that song ever again. So that's just the way music is.
Oh, yeah. Just like I was talking about earlier, how much you love two pina coladas.
Well, it's of course one of my favorite tracks.
Yeah. And I mean, another song like that, Jose Cuervo, that we both love. But,
Shelley West one.
oh, yeah. We can talk about that another day, though. Anyways,
I actually do like that song.
yeah, I do too. On track 8, we get to Somewhere Someone's Fallen in Love, which this was another Prine and Donnie Funky Fritz song. And I said earlier, I think this feels more like a grown up Prine album, for lack of better words. I mean, I don't think Prine was ever writing childish stuff, but just more sentimental. And I think this song leans into that. It's way more sentimental and subdued. It's pretty straightforward kind of love song. I think maybe with me getting older, and I'm probably not too far off from the age Prine was when he made this album. I love songs like that, and I think the sentimental love track on this one is just it's really straightforward and beautiful.
Yeah, this is like the everything is changing of this album, you know. From the Paycheck record that we just heard. You know, straightforward, a love song. Um yeah, the organ playing on this almost sounds like a horn tooting. Yeah, tooting, right? That's the technical term, I think. The
Yeah.
tooting of a horn. Um so I went to go see actually as I was listening, I was like, are there horns? Is there a horn section? Like a kind of thought maybe it was a trumpet. No, it's just a weird organ sound, and it works though. I mean, it sounds pretty, and the instrumentation you mentioned. There's so many personnel on this album, and I think that leads to the richness. It's crazy that you can have all these 80s country records and just 80s albums in general that like maybe didn't have a lot of personnel, but the production made it sound really like so much overdubbing and just like really lushness, and like this is just the opposite of that, right? Like you have a lot of different people across the record, but they all work so well together, and it's all a little subdued in the best way possible.
Yeah, this album's produced and it's not overproduced. It's really perfect on where it needs to be. And I think this album too, or this song, if you think about it, honestly, I think I don't want to always do it, but I know that we're going to keep tying stuff into our love of bourbon because that's a through line for us. And, you know, we probably won't talk too much about his music on this podcast, but it's a way to keep his memory alive. And this song is very reminiscent of Silver Drew's We Could Be Looking for the Same Thing. Very similar theme here because it kind of the narrator is saying, you know, someone somewhere there, you know, they might be falling in love, but it kind of seems like that's what the narrator's saying if you listen to the lyrics, that they're talking about themselves with the person they're talking about.
Yeah, I'd have to go look into. I mean, they were both people living in Nashville, so there's already a connection there. But the humor is what works there. The humor of these things, and then the genuineness, the ability to write something that I don't know many artists besides from those two, you know, DCB and John Prine, who can go from something just so funny and offbeat to something so genuine. It's very hard to pull that off. And yeah, I don't know. The B side of this record jumps around in such a unique way. I mean, it doesn't feel scrambled, but you're just hitting on so many different things here.
Oh, for sure. And I think this song could have been a hit. I'm kind of surprised. It reminds me a lot too of, like I said, he wrote I Just Want to Dance for You for or Dance with You with George Strait. This song's pretty similar to that, and it's not actually a super funny song or anything. It's just a really straightforward, sweet song. It's just a beautiful
Well, you
song.
mentioned it could have been a hit, and I think part of the reason why none of these charted or were a hit is that it was self-released, which you know, I play I got a radio show for WXNA here in Nashville, and you know, we get stuff that's self-released, and I a lot of it is really fascinating and good, and we try to get it out in the box so that people can play it. And you know, the problem with that is just that people have to send it to us, and then we have to hear it, and we have to make sure that we can play it. And um, you know, we're a smaller radio station, but some of these larger ones and there's more consolidation now, so in a way that's different. But I mean, just for radio play in general, like they would have had to have sent these out. It would have been self-released. They wouldn't have had the kind of like just the ability to share things. I mean, I sent you, I think, that LA Times review from 1984 when this came out, and it mentions that you couldn't really buy it in the big box stores. Like, you had to actually request it by mail, send something like $9. I think that was the exact amount, and you had to buy it from like his record label, from Oh Boy. Um, I mean, one, that's amazing. It also is why we probably haven't heard this record mentioned as often as some of the others. Um, but really, I think that's why some of these songs didn't chart. They're as brilliant and perfect as any other Prine songs, but that just goes to show what can fall apart when you don't have that major record release in terms of distribution. Doesn't mean that it's any different. It just makes a sense as to why it didn't really take off in the way that some of the other songs would have. Because even the Paycheck record, right? Like, he still got some distribution out of that, even if it wasn't him at his prime.
Oh, for sure. And I think that kind of goes into the dichotomy of country and just songwriting in general, where we talk about someone like Paycheck who actually had a really amazing voice. But there are some of these country writers like Prime that, like Dylan, they don't have a radio friendly voice. I love them, but some people are going to think differently because it is a different acquired kind of listen, like Bob Dylan or some of the great writers that aren't classic singers that we think of. So, I mean, I'm sure that never helped with radio um, friendliness for Prime, but that kind of takes me into the next track, which is track 9, People Putting People Down. And this track starts with a beautiful pedal steel and keys intro and just goes straight into a song that for me sounds like a Bob Dylan song and sounds like it could be a cover of one, which is funny because Bob Dylan actually covered this song. And I think that Prime's version sounds more like a Dylan song the way he sings and phrases and the instrumentation, which is funny, but this is definitely one of Prime's best songs ever and very relevant to today, really.
Yeah, it really is done. This song is done in the style of Bob Dylan in a lot of ways, and Bob Dylan covering it. Uh, there's a video of Prine singing it, and he said, this is the way that Bob Dylan did it. I heard Bob Dylan do this on YouTube. um, which is fascinating. As a matter of fact, that video was from. I couldn't believe this when you and I looked this up. So we mentioned this at the top of the program, but really heartbreakingly, I actually still I think many of us who love John Prine, this still hurts to this day. But John Prine died of COVID-19, sort of at the height of the pandemic, and he was on tour before that happened, not long before it, and one of his very last shows that he played, I think this third to last show, from what I see on setlist .fm, he played "People Putting People Down," and that's when he said, he was doing the version that he had heard Bob Dylan do, and I don't think he commonly played that as part of his set list, but he did there, and that was his Tree of Forgiveness tour, his last album. He was touring around on that, and he had been doing a lot of retrospective songs, like songs from all across his career. But it's worth looking up that version. We can again post a video, a link to that. But yeah, I can't remember, Josh. I'd been texting you about this. I think this is the one that the story was someone had maybe John Prine had gone to see Bob Dylan. Bob Dylan had covered the song. Someone had given him a tape of Bob Dylan covering it, and then he gave that tape to Bob. And the guy had explained that he was like a mailman or something, and he
Yeah, it
was a
was a
big fan of
mailman.
Prine. Yeah.
A
And he was a
singing
fan of
mailman.
Prine and Bob. Yeah. And then when John Prine gives the tape to Bob Dylan and says, "Here's you covering putting people putting people down," Bob said, "Where'd you get that?" And he said, "From the mailman."
Which is hilarious. That's very Prine and Dylan sounding interaction.
Yeah, those two loved each other. I think.
It seems like it.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to know with Bob Dylan, and I don't think we'll even touch Bob Dylan really much on this podcast because we both love him. Who doesn't? But I do think it's important to mention him in the context of John Prine because they seem to share a similar humor, and Bob seemed to really appreciate John Prine's humor in a way that. What better endorsement is there, really, right? I mean, but Bob seemed to always endorse John Prine, from what we can tell.
Oh, for sure. I mean, Dylan covering you is enough. I mean, he didn't have to say anything. That's plenty. And like I said, this. I mean, even the opening line: "People who are sad sometimes they wear a frown. People who are kings sometimes they wear a crown." That just sounds like Dylan. But this song is really beautiful, and it actually talks about how people without love they kind of build these walls up and put this face up that's not kind to other people, and it's kind of a good way to start slowing this album down and showing that without love is just kind of an empty life that's not very meaningful. It even says so cold sometimes it gets so cold, and that's kind of how it feels without love. And I think you could dissect this lyrically for a while, and I really don't think it's necessary. I think the song just speaks for itself. I think you're better off just listening to this one.
Yeah, I agree. We didn't have a lot of notes about this outside of from like some of the anecdotes, and it's not a long song. It's not a lyrically incredibly rich song, compared to some of the others on this. And that's not to say it's simple. It's just, um, yeah, it has a feel about it, and I think it works in that way. It almost the other songwriter it makes me think of is some Warren Zevon songs. It has that sort of like forlornness, but I enjoy it. It
Definitely.
works very well in the context of this album.
Yeah, I could hear Zevon singing that one as well. All right, so track 10 is Unwed Fathers. And as I said, this album closes out very strong. And I think this song is a complete masterpiece. It's written by Bobby Braddock and Prine, and they wrote it the day after the Super Bowl, apparently.
Probably
Um,
were nursing some hangovers, but
and and that's another person I was kind of surprised Prine is around. But if you look at Bobby Braddock, which I've talked about some of those other writers that just wrote magical songs in this album, Donnie Fritz, Dan Penn, Bobby Braddock is another level. I mean, he wrote arguably the greatest country song ever. He Stopped Loving Her Today. He has written so many gems. If you look at what he's written, it's shocking. I've looked at the list and I couldn't believe that, if someone wrote three of the songs that he wrote, they would just, I think, call it a day. But he has just countless, just marvelous songs. And it's kind of makes sense he wrote this with Brian because this song is one of the best songs I've ever heard, honestly.
yeah, this is a high point. I think that if you read into this too, one, let's just talk about. I'm sorry, but unwed father is such a funny phrase to me. Um, I don't know exactly what he's trying to say with that. I could guess, but I think he's poking at the poking fun at sort of a lot of different ideas here. I just think of even like unwed father, just the idea of being a father, the idea of like marriage, or like some of the lyrics are kind of funny to me. Like this doesn't necessarily have to do with that, but I just think of like just the idea of like weddings and being a southern person. They're kind of funny. Like I remember dating somebody when I was growing up in my small southern town, and their dad was like, "Hey, you be careful now. I'll have to shoot you." It's like he's definitely haunting this song to me. But I don't know. Maybe the unwed father is like, what? How do you interpret that figure? Because it is like it's a person in this track, right?
I think it's a idea of a person. From what I gathered, they were just throwing out names of different songs that they could write and just starting with titles. An unwed father was one that they had. Um, children having children was another one. And I think they went and kind of combined them. And so if you think about this song, I think one of the reasons this song is so poignant and magical is Brian was so great at writing about nuance in life that people I think would shy away from. And that's part of the beauty in country with its honesty, but he kind of took it to another level. And you have so many just stereotypes of people in life and I don't want to go too far off the rails, but I think it's such an easy like trope to blame these like single mothers or someone that's had a kid when they're younger and to just kind of put them down in a way. And this song's really about the unwed father is really a critique on the man that leaves that responsibility and kind of isn't responsible for the kid even though they have a part in it. And that's kind of the beauty of this song is it's really critiquing that and how that it's kind of a way of life where they can not hold responsibility and be okay with it and it's not put a burden on them the way it is the mother.
Yeah, from a teenage lover to an unwed mother, kept undercover like some bad dream, while unwed fathers, they can't be bothered. They run like water through a mountain stream.
They can go on and live their life. They don't have that burden and constant presence that the mother's going to have if they're not wanting to be involved and the shame that society can put on someone for something that they don't need to have shame for, and then the father can go live their lives because they don't have any semblance of an identity wrapped up in that they can they can ignore it. They're not carrying the baby around. They don't have to care for it.
Yeah,
And
I think
so
that was why that was the reason for the old threat of being shot when I was younger. Is the old Southern dad being like, "Hey, I know what happens when the unwed father disappears." So that's part of it. I think I love too that you start off this song in an Appalachian Greyhound station. Perfect turn of phrase too, and you end it in the mountain stream. Like I just those two things together work so well.
oh certainly, and this song sounds very Kentucky. It and it's unfortunately a stereotype of Appalachians, poor places. And I think for me, that's the beauty of this song and Prine is that he can take something that's really, you know, could be shameful, which it shouldn't be, or really sad and dark and just real and relatable. And he writes about critiques in a way that's not corny and it's so thoughtful. I mean, he's writing from the woman's perspective here, which isn't done very often in a way that he is here and with like
He shares the vocal trade off on this. It's the only track on the album. You've mentioned Silver Jews records a couple of times, and like this gave me the vibe of like some of the later Silver Jews records with Cassie Berman doing some of the lyrics and sort of trading off and that not only is it from the woman's perspective, but John Prine doesn't sing every verse on this. I assume that's Sandy Mason singing some of them, right? And it just works so well.
yeah, big time. It is a track that the trade off helps, and I think too like the if someone wrote this from somewhere else, like it could definitely touch on stereotypes with like being about Appalachian things, but this is stuff Prine maybe encountered and it's something he knew and he wasn't making it shameful. This wasn't his hillbilly elegy. This was like him saying that this is not the way things should be. Like this, there shouldn't be shame in this situation. People should be accountable and just like own up and that things. can be sympathetic and you can empathize with the situation even if you don't understand or you weren't in it. And there's so much nuance in that because life has so much nuance. And the perspective Prine gives in the song is just it's a work of art. It's, as you can compare these lyrics with any literary master to ever live, whether it's a poet, a writer, and I mean Bobby Braddock, obviously. I mean, the guy wrote Golden Ring, Divorce, just constant hits about some of life's hardest and most troubling topics. And cheers to Bobby Braddock. I know you're still out there, and man, this song, wow.
Yeah, this is what I want in a country song at the end of the day, and between the instrumentation, the vocal trade offs, the writing, yeah, it's just what you want. I Part of me wishes the song the first time I was writing the lyric or the sort of write up to this and thinking about the lyrics and thinking about how everything fit, I was like, oh, I wish this is how the album ended. Um, I changed my mind a little bit on that as I listened more and more, but I think it's a great time to talk about the last track of this
Yeah.
wonderful album.
So this album closes off with track 11, Only Love. And Sandy Mason actually helped write this one. I like Wes said, he had texted me saying the other one should be a good ender, but I think this is the perfect ending song because it's a really cohesive album about love, nuance, and the complexities of life and how people navigate love, looking for love, experience love, don't have love, missing it. And I think this is one of Prine's most beautiful sentimental songs he ever wrote. I think, like I talked about, his vocals, they're not like a classic trained vocalist, pop singer. I love them, but it's obviously, I've played them for people that are like, yeah, I like it, it's okay, but it's not maybe my thing. But I think as far as any song on this, and maybe any song I've heard Prine do, that his voice is really pristine on this song, really soft and beautiful. It's so pure, and honestly, this song kind of made me emotional. I listened to it over and over and over, and it says, "Where one love would end and one would start, I never knew. If love should come your way, you'll learn to say I love you." And it just kind of sums up everything about life.
Yeah, I didn't tell you, Josh, but when I was listening to this record again, really getting ready for us to talk about this, what changed my mind too is I listened to this, I got to the end, and I was like, I love that song so much. I want to play that song. So I grabbed my guitar off the wall and I did recorded a quick little cover of it because I liked it so much, and it's just really pretty. It's so genuine and sweet, and it's there's nothing meant to be ironic, I think, about this song. There's nothing meant to be sarcastic. Um it's played so straight that I have to think that we're meant to take it at face value. We're meant to think that, as John Prine says, only love comes true. There's nothing else you see, only love. I think this is what John Prine would mean at his very best and was always trying to tell us. Life can be a joke. There's things to laugh about, and we have to laugh about some of the darkest moments, but life is a joke that's full of love at the end of the day. And maybe that sounds too simple, but I think it's meant to be simple. It really does seem like someone giving us the kindness that he seemed to live with.
Yeah, I mean, it is simple because I think, not to get all esoteric and stuff, but that is it sums up everything about life. Love is everything when it comes. And whether that laughs or shifts, it's the most magical part of life. And it really is nothing else. I mean, that's what everyone wants in life. And that's what makes life beautiful. It's not the other things. Everything else in life stems from things of pain or not not love. And yeah, I think this is just a really straightforward song because it needs to be and it should be. I mean, there is there's nothing else to say. Like, he's just honest and right. And Man, what a magical song! What a magical album! I think the album has a perfect blend of Prine being straightforward and Prime being ambiguous, everything in between, absurd, just lyrically brilliant. And I think with as great as Prime's writing could be, and he could completely hysterical at points. He also wrote some of the best straightforward hits. And listening to this album, it's hard to not make an argument. And, he maybe was the best to ever do it. If you really look at a lot of the songs he wrote, he never lost it. Even the last album, he had some masterpieces on that, and the way he could write about the nuances of life, like I said, and just yeah, like if you can't laugh about dark things and hard times in life, like you're missing the point. And it seems like he was able to do that and make the most out of life in its hard situations. He could write about things that were so relatable to people, so poignant, culturally relevant in a way that he could critique things so well with such an open mind and perspective that we need in society. And yeah, he was one of a kind. I think just all music aside, just lyrically, I mean, I don't. He's up there with anyone for me. I don't lightly put him up there with Shakespeare and stuff. I think he is like what a gem of a person to have graced our ears. And me, he's made me cry and laugh and everything else.
Yeah, I don't like to be I like to be transparent about how I found musicians, and I knew John Prine before he passed away. I'd heard his songs, but I regrettably didn't dive in the way that I should have until I knew he was sick, and I remember the day that he passed away. I saw the news. I was heartbroken, and I don't want to end on this note, but it's a part of his story. And I remember sitting down and playing the chords to. Everyone was scared in that time too, and I remember sitting down in my living room in my apartment at the time and playing the chords to Paradise and singing that song. And Paradise is like John Prine's song. It's like his Hallelujah, right? Like it's been played a lot of places. People know it, and it's not a bad song at all. But it's been played a lot, and I think it's played a lot because it's so brilliant and it says so much in such a short amount of time. And that's all of John Prine's great songs. And Only Love is up there. I mean, one of the reasons I settled on this working is that I actually think the end of the album is Unwed Father in a lot of ways, and Only Love is like a coda. It's an outro song that ties everything together. This album, Aimless Love, is about loving people, strange romances, familial love, broken love, maybe to a lesser extent. I mean, I actually think this is a lot about like, oh, maybe that's true of Unwed Father, maybe, but um, Only Love is just such a perfect and genuine way to end it. It's such a John Prine song, such an idea. He seemed like a sweet man. I've read stories about him since he passed, and I know one story was something about that he would like go to a place and order like pie and want to eat a pie, and like I'm like that's such a Kentucky thing. Like I can definitely relate to that. I don't know, we love pie in Kentucky for whatever reason, but
Oh yeah,
I just yeah,
it's pie,
you gotta have some pie. Um,
pie.
but yeah, I just love this song. I mean, I also just love. I think it's Prine and Sandy again, and Roger Cook maybe are all singing. Like the trio of their vocals is really good. Yeah, it just works very well, and it's a great way to wrap up uh, the kindness that I think John Prine brought to the world at the end of the day. Something that, honest to God, we could use more of every day. I think if anything, I mourn that John Prine the man is gone, and I mourn the warmness that he gave to people. That it's just a hard pill to swallow because he really could make us laugh and make us feel good about things, even when he was joking about some of the worst things we have to live through.
Oh, certainly. And like, as much as I still wish he was still around to write about, some of these hard times we're going through now, even his like political songs and social commentary songs, they're still crazily relevant. And he was just a brilliant guy, and he seemed to have a good touch on life and what it meant and how to write about it. And yeah, this I think revisiting this and just thinking about a lot of his songs, I think this is one of his best records and one I think everyone should listen to. And no skips on this at all for me. I think it's beautiful. I think Prine is a really appreciated person. I don't know if he's underappreciated, but he definitely deserves to be in the conversation with anyone that's as great as they get. And like I said, this album's chock full of those guys that helped him. And I think a lot of those names people may not have heard. And I hope, like, listen to this, you go visit all those songwriters' songs. I mean, Dan Penn, Spooner Oldham, Donnie Fritz. You got Shel Silverstein on here. Um, I mean, Sandy Mason wrote some great songs. Roger Cook. But I will say I'm a little biased for Prine because once you say halfway to heaven is Kentucky, you got me there. That's something I can relate to, and yeah, I think this is a beautiful album on love and life.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's a good a place as any to leave it. I agree. I mean, this album right in the middle of John Prine's discography, and yeah, I mean, I'm so glad we dug into it. It's a real gem and one that doesn't get talked about as much as some of the others, and it was really fun to dig into it and talk about it.
I agree. Go listen to this album, John Prine, "Aimless Love" from 1984, the first one on Oh Boy Records. But for now, that is all we got for you. This is Who's Gonna Fill Their Shoes signing off. We'll be back again next week with a new album. And this is Josh.
This is Les. Looking forward to it.
See y'all later.
Adios.